Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guest we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. I'm delighted today to be joined by Phil Creek, Intake Demand Lead at the SAP Centre of Expertise for Boots, and Rohan Parikh, SAP Platform Architect at Maersk. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Craig.
And today we're going to be discussing the value of building a customer centre of expertise, following a recent insights paper that we published on the subject. And just before we get into that, guys, I'd just like to ask you, what's a small, random thing that instantly improves your day? And while you have a little think about that, for me, it's the little things. A smile, someone letting you in traffic. Wow, that just instantly makes you smile, in my opinion. But, Rohan?
Well, the first thing that came to my head is having a young son and being my first child. I just dropped him off to nursery and then he's still settling in. So then seeing that smile when I pick him up and he's still happy and then all the drama that comes after. But at least just that first point of picking up and just saying hello and being there. So it's been amazing. Being a parent, I'm very blessed for that, so thanks.
Oh, the beauty of children, that's fantastic. They can make you smile, very much so. The smiles outweigh everything else.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And Phil?
I find this, sorry for me, it's probably a bit boring, but it is actually the traffic in the morning. I think if you get the clear lane in front of you, it then means everything's you're on time. You're not suddenly in the office trying to catch up with things that you should have been doing 20 minutes ago. But yeah, that's sort of having that plan start to the day for me. Probably does at least ease the stress anyway.
A painless commute is what we all need, isn't it? Well, thanks very much for that, guys. I really do appreciate it. And just kind of before we move on, I just thought it'd be nice if you could introduce yourselves to our audience and your role. So, Rohan, if I can start with you, please.
Yeah, sure. As you said, it's Rohan Parikh. I currently work at Maersk as the SAP Technical Platform Architect. So I focus on sort of operations, ALM, BTP, bits and pieces of automation. Really appreciate the opportunity that you've invited me to this talk because, I've worked in many large organizations, similar roles that have evolved with SAP, but at the core has always been a COE focus or being part of a COE or some of the functions. And I've always led kind of the accreditation or the audit from SAP at these organizations. So familiar from various aspects of, pros and cons and what we will dive into. But in my current position, that's what I do.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, so I'm at the Boots SAP Centre of Expertise. In my role in sort of intake and as a demand lead, it's really about being the front door into the SAP SUI team. So working with both the business teams, but also the IT teams around SAP and how we can get maximum value for that. At the moment, we've also just about to go live with a migration to S/4HANA on RISE, and so on that program, I've also had a role around change management and release management activities. In terms of COEs, and I'm sure we'll get into this later on in terms of some of the questions and answers, but I'm quite passionate about our internal team and basically having capacity and capability ourselves, because I think from what I've seen in my roles across SAP across quite a few years, those businesses that do have good high performing COE teams are the ones that do get maximum value out of their SAP applications.
Oh, thank you. And that's a very interesting point we're going to move on to. And if I can stay with you on that then, Phil, so why is a customer centre of expertise such a critical function for organisations running SAP?
I think from my perspective, SAP at all organisations is complex, even probably relatively small organisations. When you actually look at the SAP applications, and now with the whole cloud rise, multiple options around hosting, to actually have your arms around what it is you've actually got, what you're actually licensed for, what you can do with those applications, it's quite easy not to be in control and to be reactive. And to me, around a COE is sort of having your arms around that and being the sort of the guardian, but also the sort of the thought leader. So when people come and talk to you about things, or also when we the other way around, when we talk to business, we can be really clear about what is it we've already got, what can we do without that, where we've got opportunities. And I think if you don't have a COE, that can become very fragmented, and as I say, you just end up just going with the flow. And I don't think you really can be leading and getting value unless you have that team in place.
Thank you. And Rohan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with those points, and I think from what I've seen or experienced, or even in this organisation and others, is just at the top level, just basically providing ownership and accountability of running your SAP, maintaining your SAP function within your teams. So hence the reason it's called a Centre of Excellence. And then obviously SAP keep changing things. There's obviously cloud and their products are changing. So I think the COE functions well with enabling the organization to allow you to be better aligned to SAP as well and all of those changes. So, not just the fact that you're improving and driving efficiencies internally for your company, but you have, I believe the purpose of the COE is to have a closer alignment back with SAP as well. And of course, the general kind of driver for having a COE is closer alignment between business functions and IT as well. With the sprawling kind of ways teams are spread out and SAP is so vast within organizations, big and small, it could get very complex and messy, and the COE kind of just brings that together in a structured framework. Is probably why it's such a critical function, I think.
Thanks. And how important is senior sponsorship and ensuring a COE is, I suppose, has the mandate and the resources it needs to succeed, Ron?
Exactly that. So, as I kind of alluded to, that SAP would be a kind of core big investment for any organization. So I guess seniors need to know that the teams that are responsible for implementing SAP, running SAP, maintaining it, are doing a good job or adhering to something. Kind of think of an analogy like, if you go for surgery, this might not be a good example, so it may need an edit, but if you go for surgery, you kind of want to ensure that the person performing that has conducted thorough kind of training, assessment, and are going to do a good job on you rather than just turn up. So similarly, I guess in a similar way for a COE, seniors would want that kind of comfort level, and internally as well. You need that kind of top-down buy-in, because people otherwise may prioritize other areas and SAP may get overlooked because it could just be this black box that's in the background and costing so much. So why do we need it? Why does it cost so much? So therefore, if you align to the practices and the governance of a COE and promote that upwards, which the COE should be doing, I believe that top-down buy-in is important for that purpose.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I can't get the picture out of my mind now. I was going into a surgery of a hospital, and somebody stood there in a butcher's apron with a hunting knife rather than a scalpel. But that's just my mind. Thanks for that picture, Ron.
Yeah.
And Phil, how have you found that at Boots around senior leadership sponsorship to ensure the success?
Well, I think building on the other points I just made, it's vitally important. I think probably from a couple of angles. So one is just generally around any costs or teams in IT. We need to understand why have we got them in the business or in the IT team. Could we do that could a partner do those deliver those capabilities? It'd be difficult for the senior leadership team to back you, unless you've got a track record of delivering and showing value within the business. The second angle really is around delivering value in the business, and those big decisions that are made around investments. Unless SAP is seen as being part of that discussion, you will be sidelined without that sponsorship. So as I say, it's twofold. One is around basically justifying the investment in your team, and that needs strong sponsorship, but also about investments in SAP as a business capability. You need to have sponsorship to allow you to be part of those discussions.
Oh, thank you. You mentioned both business and IT, and alignment between IT and business is of vital importance, I think, in everything. And why does that alignment between business and IT continue to be a struggle for so many organisations, Phil?
And I think this is a sort of topic I've sort of been thinking about, because to me, I think we are quite closely aligned in all having common objectives, which is to improve business outcomes, and from an IT perspective, that's by delivering IT solutions that enable that. But we're against a challenging environment where, as we all know now, change is constant. Costs are something that businesses have to keep to a minimum, and speed and agility is so important. And when you're building enterprise-wide solutions that probably will have lifespans of many years, sometimes those things take time, and therefore that gives a bit of frustration and friction. And I think from an IT perspective, we need to make sure that we understand that, and as I say, we deliver as quickly as possible to achieve value. But on the other hand, we need to be clear that we need to also build strategically, so we don't end up in 2 or 3 years' time with a solution which is just basically not fit for purpose, and we end up with a massive investment again. So I think to me it's about communication, shared objectives, understanding each other's perspective on whatever the topic is, because I think normally by having a single team delivering, these things are a lot easier, rather than saying, "Oh, give it to IT," and then IT come back in 6 months and people say it's taken too long. It's about collaboration. But I think there's that challenge about IT needs to accept that it needs to deliver quickly, it needs to be agile in everything it does.
Thank you. And Rohan, anything to add to that?
At the top level, I just think it's this sort of root cause of that same old saying around technology, people, and process. It's still very complicated to get alignment or correct kind of alignment on priorities. You may have business direction, and they may be savvy from an IT perspective, but to then get the buy-in to then drive IT to support the business for that journey, from a technology perspective, people, process perspective, it can be complex, and having key ownership or decision making is a part of that, because if you have a large organization or even a small or medium-sized one, having ownership of any of those towers would probably help with that, but it's very difficult to be in that position, especially when organizations have merged or acquired other parts of the business, or rolling out to different countries and regions where things can get complicated. It's not easy just to say you're responsible for this and you make the decision. So yeah, it gets a bit complicated, and of course, as Phil said, cost and progress and change management and IT changes in IT are kind of adding to that complexity.
And on that as well, so we were looking at the kind of the overarching governance, I suppose, of the SAP landscape. And from your perspective, what does good governance actually look like when managing an SAP landscape, Ron?
Yeah, good governance. So I think we actually at Maersk have KPIs that we measure kind of the success of of our team aligned to the business goals. At the top level, you could say like it's just no incidents, smooth operations, but happy customers, happy end users. But it's more than that now. It's about innovation, reducing cost, simplifying the landscape, integrating the landscape. Of course, AI will be a part of that, or is. So in terms of governance, you kind of need a structured framework or ownership to kind of report back on and say, look, this is what the COE does, and this is how we govern or kind of measure ourselves. These are the metrics, and this is what we're going to report back to you on. For example, it's like asking an organization, how will you measure and sort of measure your success around your sustainability targets? It's not easy for an organization to answer that. So similarly, in this perspective, governance of an SAP COE is not easy, but you have to kind of put those measures in place at the beginning. And then I believe you can say that would be what good looks like.
Thank you, Phil. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I suppose probably more on the practical level, and then again, it's maybe sometimes quite hard to define, but it's a thing about, I think, organisations that don't have good governance will fail more often than organisations that do. So I don't think we should sort of shy away from the fact that governance is needed. But again, it needs to be fit for purpose. It can't slow decision making down. But it needs to be in place so we understand. Basically, we've got clear lines of accountability. We can understand what decisions have been made, who's making the decisions, what are the decision rights, who actually has them, and also around sort of escalation paths. Because as I say, coming back to the S4 program at the moment, I think one of the successes we had on that program is we're upfront investing and thinking about that governance processes, and they're flexible because if a certain process isn't needed at a certain time because it's not applicable, we don't hold meetings for the sake of it. But actually having that structure in place, I think is important. And in terms of from a COE perspective, as we say, similar way, we have metrics that we report back to the business on success and stability of our SAP platforms. But actually, that's probably part of the governance that we do with the business. It's really having structured conversations with them as well. So we make sure that, back on the earlier question about how do we align, that we also are aligning with them as well on as their vision and business values change over time.
Oh, thanks, Phil. And so SAP has its own Centre of Expertise framework to help organisations set up and manage the team internally. Have you used it, Phil? And if you did you find it beneficial?
I mean, as I say, we've had a COE at Boots now for a number of years. It actually came in as part of a big SAP implementation back in the sort of mid 2010s. So we worked with SAP, and actually we were lucky. We got a couple of their consultants from their COE practice who actually came to the UK and worked with us, because the framework itself, it's not a pick and mix, but actually it comes back to saying the COEs in terms of their scope can be completely different for different organisations in terms of what functions does your COE actually cover. So part of the working with them was to look at their framework and what does a COE mean, and then work given our circumstances, what was the right COE model for us. And as I say, we've done that with them a couple of times, and as I say, I think that was useful because it gave us that best practice external view. Which we could then sort of, as I say, internalise and set up and agree how we would operate. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's a useful set of collateral that they provide.
Thank you. And so, Rohan, what are some of the common pitfalls or mistakes organisations should try and avoid when building or evolving their COE?
Yeah, so just tying it back to the previous question, SAP publish, a framework of the pillars of kind of the best practice around the COE framework, right? And how you could potentially get accredited. So you would be wrong to ignore that, or at least have a starting point if you're considering, doing that. It's almost like a recipe where they give you the base and how you're going to prepare something, and how you should do it, but you can still tweak it according to your organization or your other factors. So the first thing would be to ignore that. I think that would be a mistake. And then the other thing is around, like we talked about earlier, about senior sponsorship. I think you need a reason to have and to exist as a CEO and have that empowerment. And thirdly, most organizations deal with partners. So I think you kind of want to bring them into the mix early on around, the way they work, giving them accountability and ownership of some of the functions that they would manage, because they would be part of the COE, and even asking them, have you done this with other organizations, with other customers? I've also seen where people, organizations or teams have tried to fit in a structure or a structure for the teams to align to a COE and patchwork it, rather than kind of think top down. What is the strategy? What are the goals? What are they good at? What are their strengths? And then potentially look at where there are gaps, and then go on a journey. If you're thinking about a COE, whether it's a brownfield or greenfield kind of landscape, your team and your organization is as is, and you're not going to recruit people or teams or fill gaps very quickly. So it's more of a journey. So I think keep all of these things in mind. Would probably help.
Thank you.
We know our community, but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UKI Sub membership with those who don't know about us? The UKI Sub referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
And what are some of the key roles, skills and capabilities a modern COE needs?
Yeah, so when I generalize what a COE would look like, I kind of think a while ago I'd kind of still think of it as being honest, an IT team, with core sort of technical capability, but that's actually not the case now. It's sort of evolved where we want that closer alignment to the business and strategic goals. So obviously you have like core team members that would maintain, run, operate SAP, but then you've got like other things around digital and change management, training, learning, reporting, governance, managing sort of like licensing and expertise with and the liaison between SAP, more of that vendor kind of management side of things. We also looked at kind of incorporating service management within our function, because previously that was part of the business, but we've now brought that within our COE. So yeah, I would say initially I would kind of visualize it as more of an IT function, but absolutely not. You can add different teams and layers according to your business to structure your teams for that.
Thank you. And Phil, anything to add to that, or any more pitfalls or mistakes we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, I suppose it comes back to the stakeholder management and the senior sponsorship, really. You can't overpromise when you start. Now, it's not to say you shouldn't set yourself some challenging goals, but I think you need to build up a track record of basically delivery, and show that you're successful, so that you can get further investment, build the team, maybe bring as when it said bring in different functions into your COE. So I think that's the thing, is about think about your journey, and rather than just sprinting to the end, maybe just pace yourself and be realistic. I mean, in terms of the skills, and I think this is an interesting one around, because SAP is changing so fast. Actually, you need to have enough skills probably across the whole SAP estate, so that you can hold a good conversation with internal and external stakeholders. But actually, what you also need to do is understand where you are light in terms of actual knowledge, and therefore would maybe call on a partner. So I think it's that thing around about just understanding what your capabilities are. But in terms of in terms of beyond sort of what I call the core IT skills. So within Boots, we have a delivery function because we do work with partners, but actually we want to make sure we also retain internal delivery capability in SAP, and also we also have a framework for partners to work to deliver into Boots, so they understand our processes. And the other part is around the softer skills around that sort of communication, stakeholder management, business analysis, because we need to make sure that we have that alignment with business goals. So those things over and above SAP technical skills are always important.
Yeah, I would add one more thing, just to plug something that I missed, because we were talking about skills that core to a COE. I have absolutely put in application lifecycle management. Yes, the ALM community. Don't forget that at the user group. So obviously, being familiar with that, I would say it plays a key part of the entire journey and the entire life cycle.
Thank you. And yes, that was certainly something I was going to come back to. And obviously, I didn't mention in the beginning, which I apologise for, Rohan, as
yes,
co-chair of the ALM community. So thank you for that. And there will be lots of things to be looked at and discussed in that community going forward. And just on, you both mentioned external partners and knowledge and skills. How can organisations balance internal capability with external partners, especially around knowledge retention and critical skills within the business as well? Rohan?
So it's a funny one. I've worked in organizations mostly where it's been a mix, right? You have internal capability in partners and contractors and niche skills as well. At Maersk, it's a different one where we're actually all internal. I joined at a period when there was mass recruitment, and primarily everybody is an internal employee. And there's been pros and cons for both that I've experienced, to be honest. We have some legacy partnership for kind of AMS support for some of our legacy systems, but primarily for our S4 programs, it's internal. So just to balance that capability and retain those skills, I think obviously you can go down that avenue where you can just choose to insource and have an internal team completely. But what we found is in my previous organization, we actually, for example, played a key part of recruiting anybody from our partners. We gave them, we obviously interviewed them, but we also gave them a minimum kind of benchmark or checklist for some technical skills or capability, or even other roles that we would want them to kind of almost pass. It was like an entrance exam almost before they joined the team. So there's obviously that side to it, and then there's also another thing around establishing sort of clear boundaries between what your internal team is accountable for and your partner's accountable for, because obviously they have targets and KPIs, but obviously it could be a different kind of target for your internal teams. So yeah, I think all of those things could probably help.
Thank you. And Phil, why is documentation so important? And what are some of the consequences perhaps when it's missing?
Yeah, and I suppose it's actually sort of links back to the previous question we just answered, really, because to me it's around how can you understand something unless in some way it is documented. And again, this is the challenge we need to make sure that it's fit for purpose. We don't document just for the sake of it, but actually with such a wide ranging number of SAP products in the portfolio, unless we do understand what products we've got, how they're configured, how they interact with each other, and also how they interact outside of the SAP ecosystem, whenever you come to make change, you will run into difficulties if you don't have that in place. And in terms of back on the point about partners, part of that is therefore saying for a partner, you are accountable for the delivery, but there are processes and documentation that you need to adhere to be our partner. So things like new design authorities around, and again, I'm sure we're going to come on to it, clean core, but it's around, we have principles about how we expect you to deliver SAP products for us. So by having the process, but also the documentation and ways of working clearly defined, we can work with different partners, but actually from a customer perspective, actually they don't know who is delivering this. Is it being delivered by the internal team? Is it being delivered primarily by a partner? Is it being delivered in conjunction? Because actually what we're saying is we have a good way and a successful way of delivering SAP at Boots, and we always deliver it in that way. It doesn't matter who's doing the actual delivery.
Oh, thank you. You brought up, one of the sayings of 2025, I think, clean core. And, as organisations move towards that clean core, what role do you feel the COE can play in keeping systems standardised and upgrade friendly?
And again, as I say, I think it's that thing. And in terms of clean core, because I think when it was first discussed, I think a lot of people thought it was you have to do it. Well, you've got to do it all in one go. And I think people can realise that was just unrealistic. So for us, that is a journey, and that comes back to, as I say, I mentioned earlier about things like design authorities. So what we would do is when we're delivering SAP solutions, if there's options around the solution, yes, always we want to go for the cleanest, most standardized solution. But actually, if for certain reasons that's not possible, then what we would do is within our design authority, we will have key design decisions with the various options and the pros and cons of those, and basically amongst the relevant stakeholders, both across the sort of management team, but also across the technical teams, they'll make a decision. But ultimately, our principle is we should always build new clean. And as part of our post S4 sort of exploitation of the products, what we will be doing is we'll be going back, and where things are still not clean as they could be, we will be investing to make those changes.
Thank you. Anything to add to that, Rohan?
Yeah, definitely. From a COE perspective, that depending on the teams and the functions, it should be able to provide some tooling and processes to help support organizations to move towards clean core or drive sort of customization out of your systems and landscapes. That's from a technical perspective. But this reminds me of the keynote at the conference, Craig, from I forgot his name, but it's from the Twinings Ovaltine. Sandeep, that's right, where he had those 5 principles. I think that's what he called them, where he said everything we do in this program adheres to these 5 principles, and it was around including customizations and building new developments. So he kind of said, if there's no fundamental reason for doing this, then why do it? So I think something along those lines. But basically, it reminds me the purpose of a COE, that you can have that ownership, authority, and governance to say, look, these are our principles around clean core. It doesn't have to be about extensions or development. It applies to lots of pillars. And if you don't adhere to some of these, as per the keynote, then you're going to try very hard not to kind of adopt changes or manage developments in our systems. So yeah, I think that was a good one. And in terms of what other roles a COE can play, I mean, sometimes you can't avoid this due to legislation and so on. But having that, as I said, ownership or accountability to say, look, we make the decision and that's it. I think that's the fundamental for me, having that ownership.
Thank you. And have you seen any, or do you have any examples in your organisation of the COE successfully driving innovation rather than just maintenance and governance?
We'd obviously all say yes, just to look good. But yeah, there have been some tangible examples. Exactly that. Like you said, not just smooth operations and maintenance, BAU stuff. The purpose of our COE is to kind of, over time, I would say, keep flat or reduce cost, even though we absorb more and more things into the COE of ownership. and also we've innovated with SAP. We've kind of worked closer with the business. So there's been examples where previously it would be siloed. For example, we would have performance issues or stability issues or user experience issues, and the ownership would be passed around between business, functional teams, IT, the COE. Whereas now we kind of, I think a colleague of mine who owns this space in service management describes it far better. But in terms of the Maersk analogy, we kind of had a ship that was creaking and falling over, and now we've steadied the ship because of that COE function and the structure of having that ownership, and eventually impacting the user experience and bottom line. So there's been one example. From a technical perspective, we've migrated our systems to cloud, and all within the COE, in a very rapid time. That working with Microsoft and SAP said that it may take far longer, but again, this was handled internally by the COE capability through innovation and finding new ways of doing this. Obviously, the kind of topics around RISE and the benefits of pros and cons of that are there to be considered, but we're not looking at that at the moment.
Thank you. And Phil, any examples from Boots?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of historically, SAP's driven a lot of innovation around visibility of stock levels to customers. In terms of our focus in the last couple of years has really been about our move to S4. We as part of that program, we're delivering a number of sort of improvements to the business on that, especially in the sort of the finance area. But I'll be honest and say that there's a lot more we can do on that, and we've already started looking at a lot of sort of the AI functions with finance colleagues, which will deliver as fast followers to that program. I think historically, we've been on older versions of SAP, which have made the what I'd term sort of true innovation maybe a little bit harder than it should have been. So with our move to S4 and being on RISE, we're looking really to ramp up that innovation, and also it links back to the partnership with the business, freeing up our functional teams to have more time to spend with the business to get behind what's actually would give value to them, and then looking at SAP portfolio to see how we can help with that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd just like to touch on now, I think, you both mentioned complexity of systems. You've both mentioned cloud, RISE, hosting. Phil, you mentioned obviously Boots COE back in 2010, which is quite some time ago now. And Rohan, you mentioned obviously Maersk moved to the cloud. How do you see the COE kind of developing and evolving as SAP customers move to the cloud? Do you see any fundamental differences in a COE for a cloud-based organization running SAP completely in the cloud to kind of previous on-prem, or is it similar, Ron?
Some of the core functions will still obviously remain. We talked about governance and ownership and all of that, and some of the sort of standard BAU things. But absolutely, there needs to be a shift, because I'm hoping SAP update their framework to help along that journey. But the move to cloud, basically, for me, SAP seem to promise, we'll look after everything, don't worry, just we'll have that ownership. You just concentrate on your business transformation and processes. But that's absolutely not the case down on the ground. And that hybrid scenario, moving on that journey, is where the COE will definitely play a part and have to adapt to suit that. What the answers are, I don't at the moment know, because within my organization currently, we're not looking at a sort of RISE or GROW or anything like that. We're still on private cloud with our own internal teams for the medium term, it seems, because of some analysis that's been done around that. But yeah, in general, for other organizations or for sort of new implementations, moving to cloud, how the COE would need to adapt for that purpose, yeah, definitely things would need to change in terms of, like we discussed earlier, the roles and skills, structure of the COE, alignment or what SAP is now responsible for, better alignment with SAP, faster innovation do we just get innovation in the cloud still? What about those other guys that are left behind? So yeah, all of those topics are relevant. Like we even discussed about training, maintaining skills. Do we just leave that and now let SAP take care of everything? Not sure. So yeah, key things to kind of figure out.
Well, thank you. And Phil, anything to add to that about the move to cloud?
Well, I think again, it was mentioned earlier in one of the answers around SAP being a black box. The challenges of the cloud, it becomes even more of a black box, which I think is where businesses will not get the value from it. So I think it's about the COE needs to understand how SAP is being run for your business. Yes, in the past maybe we had a basis team that was more under our control, that was accountable for some of those underlying infrastructure type activities, and that they're no longer required because they are being delivered by basically a different partner, SAP. But that doesn't mean you don't need to, as an organisation, understand how your SAP system is set up and being run. I think in terms of the cloud, again, increasingly we're seeing more sort of SaaS products as well. So again, it's about having the internal team that understands how can we connect those products to get maximum value. So I think we did some work back in, again, quite a few years ago now, when we first moved to host on systems on Azure. So that changed some of the things we did. As I say, part of our S4 program moving to RISE, that will change. That's going to make more changes. As a COE, you just need to adapt. But again, it's that thing around if someone said to to IT team, well, tell us about your SAP landscape. Where's it run? How's it run? Within a COE, I'm confident that we would have an answer to that. We could play back really, really quickly. I've got a feeling some other organisations will probably struggle to understand where the systems are hosted if they haven't got a COE in place.
Thank you. Appreciate that from both of you. And just on your point, Rohan, I do believe SAP is updating things. I was chatting to Pedro Rontes from SAP towards the end of last year, who worked with us on the paper, and he said that they were doing quite a bit of stuff around the COE in the cloud. So maybe we'll have an update to the paper with some additions as we go through. And, as you mentioned, the ALM community of UK ISUG, there'll be a lot of discussions, no doubt, there in the coming year as we go through the events. But in short, gentlemen, thank you. Phil, Rohan, thank you so much for your time and for your insights. Really do appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you as well.
Great to speak to you both.
And thank you for listening. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And probably more importantly to this episode specifically, go and download the paper. The link will be in the show notes. It's on the UK ISUG website, sapusers.org. And do participate in the ALM community. Come along and speak to other SAP users and professionals so that you can learn more around this and really get the most out of your SAP systems moving forward. So until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and have a great 2026.